Hi, I'm Laura Brandenburg with Bridging the Gap, and today we are here to talk about work samples, particularly work samples that will get you hired for a business analyst job. And the prompt for this video was an email I received from a member of our community. And this particular person had 10 years of experience in an informal environment and lost a job opportunity after he provided work samples. And I won't read you the entire email from the dilemma, but a few of the key points is that he had a certification, an exam-based certification in business analysis. He had a lot of informal experience where he was just showing up and making things happen and being as successful as he could in an informal environment. And he had had 2 interviews with this company, and great feedback through the interview process. And then at their request, forward a few sample deliverables from his past projects, and then was declined for the position. And the feedback he got was that the deliverables were good, but not really strong enough for that particular position. And obviously that is incredibly a frustrating experience to feel like you are so close to the next opportunity. And also like this catch-22 of like, how do I get the formal experience when my past experience is less formal without actually getting into the formal, to the job with more formality in the first place. So I want to share a few tips for you today. You might be in a similar situation, or an employer might have requested work samples for you and you're like, what should I do? How should I handle this? Because it is really important that you handle it in the best possible way to give yourself the best possible chance of success for that position. So first of all, let's just talk about why employers or interviewers request work samples. So it's often very difficult for an interviewer to assess the quality of a business analyst in a job interview. A lot of employers don't understand how to interview business analysts, what they're looking for. They know there's this like intangible quality that they need out of somebody to be successful in this role, but they're not quite sure. They don't feel confident in assessing for it. And so this can lead to some discomfort with your qualifications in an interview. It can be the reason that they're like, well, maybe if I just saw their work sample, saw what they've created for another company, I would feel really confident about their ability to work in my company. And so that's usually like they're looking to fill a gap in their confidence in your abilities when they're asking for that. Some employers might just ask for it consistently across all candidates, but if you're being asked at a specific point, it's because they sense that there's a gap in your skills and they're looking for, but they're invested in you, they're interested in you, they want potentially see the potential for you, but they're just a little bit uncertain. And so your role is to help close that gap. So there's a problem with work samples though, right? Because we know that the requirements documentation that you created doesn't really tell the entire story, right? The deliverable, the output, whatever is in Word or Excel or prototypes, a wireframing tool, a visual model, whatever that is, it doesn't necessarily show what went into creating it, like how complex that process was before you simplified it, or the diversity of personalities that you had to deal with in terms of your stakeholder group, or the politics you negotiated, or the challenges you overcame, right? It's simply a representation of the work, the output that you created after you navigated all of that messiness of the business analysis process. And if you do want to learn more about the business analysis process specifically, I invite you to join my absolutely free workshop. It's called The Quick Start to Success, and there'll be a link to that below this video. But regardless, right, they don't see the process you went through. They see that output. And so it's very, very difficult for somebody to review a work sample out of context and get a good sense of your work as a business analyst. So they really need the context of the project. And so my first tip for you is to be sure that you are only providing work samples with context, right? So not just sending them over email, not just leaving them behind in an interview, but walking through them, preferably in a live setting, in a Zoom call or in a face-to-face interview, whatever the setting is. And so you are describing the deliverable while also describing what went into creating that deliverable and the contributions you made to that project. And especially in this specific instance, like that person had already been through 2 interviews, suggesting a follow-up phone call or a third interview to speak to the work samples would have been completely in line. And this is a bit of a side tip about the job search process in general, is as a business analyst, it is important to take ownership of that job search process. Yes, there's a hiring process that the employer goes through, and yes, you want to be accommodating to that and respect that, but you also want to make sure you are doing things in a way that present you in the best possible light. And so when they're asking for something like this, it's up to you to figure out what is it that they really need here and how can I help them meet that need. It's like doing business analysis on the whole situation and using your BA skills to ensure that you're actually meeting the real need. So a bit of a side note there. So in that discussion though, when you have that discussion, you would review your work sample. You could talk about, like, I included this element for this reason. This stakeholder was involved, or these stakeholders were involved, or this was a particularly sticky challenge. And so you're able to give that context. You're able to give the flavor, and you're able to give them a sense of the full picture of how that document or that deliverable fit into the project. Now, you may still have the issue of having informal work samples because your organization didn't require a formal use case or a formal business process or a formal business requirements document or whatever it is that they're looking for. And there is no rule that says that you have to submit work samples exactly as they were created in your last environment. I would suggest updating your body of work to use more formal methods, especially if this is a challenge that you're facing in your job search. Go back and pick out your best samples and rework them in a more formal methodology using some more formal techniques and skills. So this is something that our participants in the Business Analyst Blueprint certification do, and those samples actually get reviewed by an instructor and assessed as part of them earning their applied certification in business analysis. They get feedback on that. They get to pass in terms of, like, they've met the requirements for the certification, knowing that that deliverable is actually put together in an industry standard way. So then you know when you're sending those examples in that they're the right examples and that they're at least the industry standard. That company that you're hiring with may or may not be applying exact industry standards, but you will at least know that you understand and are applying industry standards. And that's another reason why you want to have a conversation, because they might ask for a use case and you might send in something that's a use case, but it's different than how they do use cases, right? Because they have a different understanding of that. And if you're walking through the example together, you are going to be able to see if it's not hitting the mark of what they expect and be able to translate your experience into the kind of deliverable that they'd expect. But you can also, just as a way of preparing, is go back and update your past documentation. We do have participants that do that. We have other participants who maybe have an informal background and volunteer or find other opportunities to create new documentation for new projects that's using more formal methods. Okay, before we end this video, I want to share just one more piece, and that's how to interview so that work samples might not even be requested, right? We talked about how the fact that they are being requested is because there's a gap in understanding or a gap of confidence that the interviewer has in your qualifications. So one of the ways to really counteract that, or to help them feel more confident, is to be sure that you are sharing very specific examples in the interview of your work and of the details of how you have done your business analysis work. I'm talking the kinds of requirements documents you've created, the number of stakeholders you've worked with, the specific challenges you've had, how you got people to show up for your meetings, what kinds of questions you asked, like just being very specific about examples and domains. And you don't want to share proprietary information about the company, but you can share details about the project. And not all interviewers ask behavioral interview questions, although they really should, but they might not ask that. They might ask, what is a use case? What is a business process? And you want to say, here's what a use case is. And here's one that I created on my last project. It was like how to search for a new product on XYZ system, right? Or so it's a very specific, here was the use case I wrote. And so they're going to have that confidence of like, oh, this person has actually done it. And that helps them start to see how you can also be successful in their company. So I hope this helps you create some amazing work samples or address the question of how to respond to a request for work samples if a potential employer is requesting them of you. And if you would like to work with me and my team more deeply to actually learn the foundational skills of business analysis and build your body of more formal work samples, I invite you to join the next session of the Business Analyst Blueprint Certification Program. Again, you'll gain real-world experience in all the industry standard techniques and business analysis processes, and you will create a body of work samples that has been vetted by experienced instructors and have the opportunity to become a credentialed business analyst as a recipient of the applied certification in business analysis. So I invite you to check more about that. I will also leave that link below. And again, I'm Laura Brandenburg at Bridging the Gap. We build our profession one business analyst at a time, and success starts with you.